Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Creative Well virtual retreat. We are spending these 4 days refilling our well of creativity so that we can go back out and live our best creative lives. My name is Aimee Blair. I'm the founder of Creative Compass and the host of this event. And today I am thrilled to introduce to you Larissa Russell. Welcome, Larissa.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be a part of anything you put on. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And we're excited to have you. So a little bit about Larissa. Larissa is the founder of Creative You Healing. She is an internationally recognized author, speaker, artist, coach, and healer. And she firmly believes that you can heal yourself through creative expression, like drawing, writing, meditating, and tapping into your spiritual essence. With extensive knowledge in various spiritual practices, Larissa utilizes her intuition and spiritual insights to guide women in accessing their intuition and inner healing. Her aim is to empower women to establish healthy boundaries and discover endless opportunities in life. Larissa is dedicated to assisting women who are eager for transformation. With her rich experience and adaptability to change, she offers a distinctive outlook that encourages women to set and respect their boundaries and pursue their true desires in life. Larissa has also been a mentor to me on my business journey. So if you are curious or toying with the idea of turning your creativity into a business at any point, you definitely want to connect with Larissa. So thank you again so much for being here, Larissa.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I really am excited to be here. I love what you do. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you so much. So, Larissa, I thought we'd start our conversation today by talking a little bit about boundaries. You talk in your bio, you mentioned you help women set boundaries so that they can realize their dream lives, their dreams, their lives. Why do you think it's so hard for so many of us to have those boundaries in our life?
We're literally not taught that we can have boundaries. We're not taught that we are important enough to have boundaries. Our society treats women as like they can do all the things, they must do all the things, right? You want to work outside the home? Great, but you still have to do all the other things. You want to take time for yourself? Well, you make sure everything's planned ahead of time so that you can take those few moments for yourself. We are not taught that we can put ourselves first. We are not taught that we need to put ourselves first in order to keep going with all the things that are expected of us. And so it's not that we don't want to or we don't think it's a good idea. We literally don't know that it's an option. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of it. Mm, yeah.
And why is it so important that we have those boundaries in place? What's the consequence of not having boundaries in our life?
Burnout, depression, anxiety. There's just so many different things. And especially now we see with all the changes in the world and all the angst and everything. And then as women, we're trying to do all the things. We we look after the children. We have our work that we do, whether in the home or not, looking after the home, looking after our partners, looking like we are responsible for so many things. And we go, yeah, but we always have been. Yes, and that doesn't make it right. And as we're becoming more aware of the fact that we've always been responsible for all of the things, we've realized the load that we're carrying. And now it's once you awaken to something, it becomes even heavier, right? And so when you know that you're doing all of the things, or you start to recognize the imbalance, you really start to pay attention to how much it actually weighs. And if you don't, then you have the depression and anxiety, those debilitating illnesses that will stop you from doing the things because you're not paying attention. So it's kind of like you can't win for losing sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't put those boundaries in place, you're one of two things. You're going to get sick and have to take a break, or you're going to start to recognize and things are going to get so heavy that you cannot keep going. And so either way, it's a lose-lose. When you start to put those boundaries in place and you start to pay attention to what you need to be able to help everybody else, to be able to be there for everyone else, it expands for you. You have more energy. You have more personal value. You value yourself more, right? That self-worth part comes in. And really, we often will make those changes for other people, not our own self. But it can really expand on how we value ourselves as we start to do that. Because we cannot, the airplane analogy, we all know this one, right? You have to put on the mask yourself before you can help someone else. And we know that, but we don't embody that. We don't actually take that in. But it's so true. Why do you think we have so many women that, depression, anxiety, and debilitating illnesses? Because that load is so heavy. And I'm not saying that we can't do it. We absolutely can. We're amazing. Women are amazing. But we have to look after ourselves while we're doing it. And that's where boundaries become really important, right? Yeah.
I know that everything you're saying is going to resonate with so many of our viewers. And for me, in my work, I talk to creative women all the time who have beautiful visions of art they want to make and creative lives that they want to lead, but they're so convinced that they don't have time, that they can't fit it into their lives. And yeah, this conversation of how do you put a boundary around it so you can have that vision, so you can have that creative life that you're dreaming of, is just so important. So, so important.
It's so important, but it's also so difficult,
Yeah.
right? Because you get so much pushback because it's not the norm,
Yeah.
right? Women are supposed to just do. And it's not the norm to put a stop of some sort in place. And so you're going to get pushback. Anytime that you start to do healing work, start to do that self-awareness, anytime that you're working towards bettering yourself, you're going to get some sort of pushback because our brain wants things to stay the same. It wants the status quo. It doesn't like change, but so does everybody else's, right? So everybody else's brain is going, no, they're changing. We can't have this. So it's not that they dislike you and they want you to be unhappy, but their brain is saying, change is bad, danger, danger. Your brain is saying, change is bad, danger, danger. And so you have this clash of, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? And you get all this pushback on change. And so, of course, many of us take one step forward, two steps back, right? Because of that. But as we move forward even more, things are shifting more. And now people start to put parameters on relationships where they fall away completely. And that can be really hard. So it's hard to do the work, but necessary. It's really necessary.
Yeah. Yes. People like you to stay in your box where they understand you. And then when you push out of that box, they get a little scared because they don't quite understand you anymore. They're not sure what box to put you in. And
Hmm.
most women
Yeah.
I know occupy many boxes. We don't want to go into one box.
No, I've never understood the box. I've never fit in the box. I've looked at the box and went, I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
For our viewers who saw the Barbie movie, there's a moment where they try to literally put her back in the box and she won't get in.
Yes.
Enjoyed that metaphor. Um,
Yeah.
so, Larissa, we're talking today about staying filled up, keeping our well filled so that we don't get into that depleted, exhausted, overwhelmed state that is just the antithesis of creativity. Like, to me, those are like the public enemies of creativity: overwhelm, exhaustion, depletion. You're not going to be living your best creative life in that state. So I've been asking all our guests, for you personally, what are the red flags or the telltale signs that you're heading down that road, that the well is drying up and you might be heading towards depletion and exhaustion?
For me, it really is my creativity. When the ideas stop flowing, I know because I have ideas. I have so many ideas, and it's constant, constant, constant. And when they start to slow down and become further apart, I know it's time to like take a break. I also have some very physical things, like towards the end of the day, I cannot get the words out properly. I can't speak properly. And so it's like, okay, I need to pay attention to this and stop talking. I need to just sit and create or sit and do something. But I think often, and this comes back to boundaries, if we don't recognize where that burnout is, or we don't recognize when we've had enough until it's too late, right? We get sick, or then we don't know to put boundaries in place. But when we can start to recognize where we feel it in our body, how we feel it in our body, how it shows up for us, then we can start to put things in place to make sure that we can look after ourselves there. And for me, it's bringing more creativity back when I start to see that the thoughts are slowing down and I'm not coming up with new ideas, and I'm like, wait, when have I created, when have I taken this time that I need? Because we always let go the things that are most beneficial to us because we come last, right? And so we let go of the things that are really important to help us because we're so busy expending energy in other places. So setting that boundary in place where we can bring ourselves back to what is important to us and actually take the time to do it. And so I have canceled appointments because I just needed to paint, right? I just needed to sit with myself, or I needed to meditate or journal, whatever it was, but I needed to take that time in creativity. It really is my lifeline. And I think if most people were honest, whatever creativity is to them is their lifeline, but it's the first thing to go when we get overwhelmed.
Yes.
And so reminding yourself that you need to do, and it doesn't have to be painting, it could be gardening or baking or, yoga, whatever it is for you, but spending that time in what refills your bucket and making sure that it's important, making sure that it comes first so that you don't get so depleted that you get sick and you can't do the things that, and then beat yourself up for not being able to do the things. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that self-awareness of just how important our creative practices are to us, because you're right, they are the first thing to go off the list. As soon as the calendar gets busy, the day gets busy, somebody else needs something, they are the first thing to go off our schedule. And yet, like you said, they're our lifeline. They're the thing that keeps us going.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
think
they really are.
yeah, that self-awareness of how important that is. And then also sometimes a conversation with the people, other people in your home, so that they also understand that that is your lifeline, because our culture doesn't always value it. We have to teach people its value.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just in saying that, that's part of the where when you put boundaries in place, you get some pushback. It's like, well, if you have time to do that, then, I'm going to go golfing or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, that's fair, but not at the same time. Like my time needs to be, everybody needs their thing. Everybody needs that thing that's going to refill them. And I think for women especially, it is so important that we take that time for ourselves. Yeah. Mhm.
So when let's say you missed the red flags, as we all do from time to time, and you do end up in that overly depleted, exhausted state, what are your go-to strategies to sort of fill back up?
Yeah, the funny thing is I need, like, if I get to that too far stage and you're like almost numb, like I need a little bit of no thinking time, right?
Mm.
Not even creating, not even, and I know a lot of people will like sit in front of the TV for hours. I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I get to that point, I'm like, I'm just gonna watch a stupid movie.
Yes.
And then I just like sit with that, like, okay, I don't have to think, I don't have to do anything. And then, okay, but I'm not going to sit there for hours because it's just not my style. It's like, okay, now I've done that. I've let my brain like relax. And it's like, okay, now what's the thing I can do? And usually it's going to be something creative because that does fill me back up. Also, nature's really important to me. And I live in the city. I live right downtown, but the river valley is not very far. So I can walk. And sometimes I'll even drive out of the city to get to, bigger spaces of nature, because nature is such an important part in refilling. And not just like, standing under a tree. I have to get like my bare feet in the grass or, the water, whatever it is, to really feel the nature. And so the creative practice usually will come, I'll go for a walk and then come back and do something creative. And sometimes I feel like I don't even have the energy to do that, right? Because again, those things that fill us up are the first things to go. And I have to force myself, because I've learned if I don't, it just goes on and on and on. And it takes so much longer to recharge. But if I can force myself to take that time, and it could be just coloring in a coloring book, it could be just swatching markers, it could be, answering questions in a journal as opposed to like free writing, whatever it is, to just get started, right? And just get started. And once I get started, then you can kind of feel that spark again, and you get a little more into it, a little more into it. And once I start to feel the ideas come, I'm like, oh, that energy's coming back, right? I can feel it coming back to me. Yeah. And that's really important. So yeah, it's kind of stages. If I let it go too long, then it takes me longer to recover from it, right? And so really being aware, and sometimes it'll sneak up on you. I had an incident not that long ago where it snuck up on me and I ended up in the hospital. And so I had to take time. I had pushed too far, and it wasn't work. It was an emotional pushing that I had done. And then it sort of derailed everything and I was completely done in. So it was like an emotional break. Like I literally couldn't function because I had tried too hard to keep all the pieces together. And so looking at that, I can now see where I got this. The signs were there. I wasn't paying attention because it was not physical work. It was not looking after other people. It was emotional work that I needed to do. And I had to break through it. And it just stopped me in my tracks. Now that I had that, I can go back and go, oh, those were the signs. You need to pay attention to those new signs. And sometimes that's what happens, right? You do have to break to be able to know what it was that broke you, so that you can, hopefully not, but it does happen that way sometimes, right? But the recovery time is so much quicker the more you do the work. So a couple of years ago, something like that would have like knocked me off for a year. This time it took me a few weeks to recover, right? So having all those tools in our tool belt really can make the difference. And that's where the boundaries come in, because you learn them over time, and you don't just all of a sudden put up brick walls. First, you're going to put up a little, garden fence, and then you're going to maybe it'll have, some string across it this time. And then, so it's going to be a little bit stronger every time. But once you have those in place, you've learned to look after yourself. And so then if something major does happen, your recovery time is much quicker, because it's not just the boundaries, but it's all the learning that goes with those boundaries. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Larissa, I know we're going to make some art together today. Can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about what we're going to do?
Yeah. So just with our talk about boundaries, I thought, you know what, we're going to do a little bit of boundary work on the page. So just watercolors and water. And I'll get you to flip the camera on. And all right. Was that good? Yeah. So when we think about boundaries for our own self, and I do a lot of exercises like this where um, I do a lot of exercises like this for us to explore different emotions, to explore different feelings in our body. And often art will allow us to really express ourselves in different ways. So what I'd like to do is I want you to just, feet on the ground, hand on your heart, just really feel into what it would mean to you to have boundaries, even in just one thing that you would love to say no to or yes to, but one thing that you would like to draw a line in the sand that you just haven't been able to do. Just want you to feel into that. And it might be, it might be some angst. It might be some chaos going on in there. It might feel calming. It's going to feel different for everyone, but I just want you to feel into that. And then once you have that feeling, I want you to just put some water on your paper to start with. It doesn't have to be a lot. I'm just going to spray a little bit. But I want you to put the water on first, because as we use watercolors, and whatever color you feel into, there's no right or wrong colors. And I just want you to be touching your brush. And you may or may not be able to see the water on your page. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't. I just want you to touch your paint, whatever color it is for you, to the water that you've sprayed on. Just touching that paint to the, and if there's more than one color that's speaking to you right now, you can add more than one color. Really been drawn to the autumn colors lately. I think it's the warmth. I'm just So as you've got some paint, and maybe you're dripping it on, maybe you're touching your brush to it, just get some paint on. Maybe you've got bigger globs than I do. There's no right or wrong. But I just want you to notice, once you have some paint on your page, where there's very, very straight lines, where there's very contained, where there's boundaries to your paint, and where there isn't. And when we're creating, we often look at the way the paint runs and the beauty that's there with the paint. But personally, to other people, they might see the beauty in you not having boundaries because it's beneficial to them. But for your own self, that beauty is lost as everything starts to run together and the colors start to get muddy as they run together. And you no longer have just a nice flow. You then have things becoming messy, right? Because it will start to run, and you might even move your page around as you see the colors run together. Let's do that a little bit. And now, like here, you can't even tell if oranges or browns. You can't, and everything gets very muddy when you start to. And I want you to think about your own self with that. And not so much as in what is pretty on the page, but what happens when things run together, when you don't have boundary lines, when you don't have energy barriers. And there's puddling here. There's, combined colors, and it gets very muddy when you have different colors. You have no idea what's happening. And I want you to just think about yourself for a moment in that messiness, because that's what happens to us when we don't have boundaries, right? Everything becomes messy. Everything becomes messy. And now I want you to just add some more paint to it. I want you to create a barrier around the outside. So even if it's messy on the inside, you've got a bit of a barrier around the outside. It might be one color. It might be more than one color. Because different places, depending on your barriers, those boundaries that you put up might be different for different people, different situations. I just want you to create that boundary for yourself. Allow all the messiness to stay inside, because we're going to be chaotic. We're going to be messy on the inside, right? That's just part of life.
Mm-hmm.
But as we create this barrier or boundary on the outside, it allows us to start to play with our own energy or look into our own energy, and we can start to move things around and bring them together. We can add more colors because we're not worried about it spreading out any further. We're not worried about it going any further. So we can just play, and we can see what's comfortable for us and see what's not comfortable for us. And maybe we like some parts more than others. And maybe there's a little break here and something starts to leak out. And then you're like, you know what? We're just going to just make this barrier a little bit bigger right there. Right? And I just want you to think about that as you're playing with your paint and you're playing with the energy of flow and our own boundaries, our own self-care. Think about what goes into looking after yourself. Think about just keep adding some paint on the page. Think about why you struggle to have a boundary. Think about where you wish you had boundaries. And really tap into what it would mean to put a boundary there. And I know we can often get really caught up in, how it's going to affect other people. As women, we're here to serve, right? We're here to help others. We have children, we have spouses, we have jobs, we have all the things. And we often think about how it's going to affect other people. But how is it affecting you? Is it getting more and more chaotic? Is it coming together? When you think about it, when you think about having a boundary, what does that feel like? What does that feel like to think about having a boundary and what it would mean for you, what it would mean for other people? Just really feel into that. Really feel into what that means for you, what that means for others. And sometimes you might have to move your barrier, your boundaries out a little bit. Sometimes you might have to have an opening to allow some energy to come out occasionally, but just being guarded. It doesn't have to be a hard boundary, but just something that's going to protect you. As you're adding colors, even if it's messy, just know that this is for you. This is for your best interest. This is for everyone around you best interest. Because if you don't have a boundary, if you don't look after yourself, if you don't say no sometimes, how will you continue to look after everyone else? So I just want you to sit with that, really sit with that. You may have a little bit of muddiness, and you may have a little bit of blending and mess, and you may have some areas that you just love. And I want you to think about that and how that affects you, because here we've built this boundary, right? And it may have to shift, like over here, I got a little bit bigger, and over here, I opened it a little bit, and, all of those things. But as you're looking at what you've created, just allow yourself to feel into all of that that's going on in your body, all of that that's going on in your mind when you think about putting a boundary in place. And ultimately, it's not about what we've created on the page. This is a distraction. This is where we distract ourselves so that we can feel into what it is for us. And I'm going to bet that for most of you, there's resistance, there's chaos, maybe a little bit of fear. And then underneath there's also I deserve it. Because you do. And so as we've been moving this paint around on the paper and allowing the flow of it, I want you to feel into the deserving, because that's often what will hold us back. Feel into the deserving of those boundaries, because we don't want to make other people uncomfortable. We will be so uncomfortable so as not to make other people uncomfortable. And so I just want you to really feel into the deserving, even if at this point you have to think about it for someone else. I deserve it so I can do better for my kids. I deserve it so that I can do more for my partner or my job. If you have to think about it that way right now, that's okay. That's the first step. But I want you to just really feel into the deserving of it. And when this dries, I would challenge you to journal on top of it. I'm a big journaler. To journal on top of it and really feel into the deserving of those boundaries, right? Because that is what holds us back from not upsetting others, and we don't deserve it. We don't deserve to upset others. And so I just want you to think about that. And the creation that we did here was more about distraction. We had our barriers, and we had the flow and the muddiness. And as we continue to do this, and when we can distract our conscious mind with something, and this is where creativity comes in so handy, when we can distract our conscious mind, our subconscious mind can do the work. And so as we created on the page and we felt into the deserving, we felt into what it felt like to have those boundaries, your subconscious is starting to do that work. And so when you are creating, even if you're not expressing ultimately on the page, as in, I am painting this feeling, when you are creating on the page and thinking, putting that energy into what you want to process, it is profound how deep it can go, how deep it can go. So I just want you, and I would recommend, once this dries, right on top of this, to just journal it, what it, into that deserving. Yeah. Yeah. Aimee, for you, how did that feel to do that?
Yeah, that was great. I definitely felt, the fear that you were talking about, the fear of upsetting people, of disappointing people, of confusing people, of confrontation, potential confrontation. All of those things came up for me for sure. And when I'm looking at my art, so my art looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
Just visually, what I noticed is as I was drawing my boundary around the outside, it kind of has this amorphous shape. It's not like you said, the brick wall.
Hmm.
Something that might have to bend and flex and flow as life happens, but it's still there.
Hmm. Yeah. And it was very noticeably there, which I love. And I think that you have taken time for yourself. You're still a mother and you still have, things you have to do, but you do take the time. You take time for your business, you take time for your creativity. You know how important it is. And so you do have some pretty clear boundaries in place, which is awesome. Hmm.
Actually, a funny story came to mind while I was making this that just happened this week. I've been trying to set some boundaries around my children getting into my good quality art supplies that I buy for like my art. They have their own, but mommy's are always more fun. And one of my daughters took a expensive art supply and ruined it. And so just um I know that's kind of just a simple little example, but I needed some much firmer boundaries around what art supplies were mine and what supplies are theirs and where the line is that they may not cross.
It's so true, right? And depending on how we express those boundaries too, because I know when I was a mother, I'm still a mother, but when my children were younger, my grandkids are, becoming teenagers now. But when my children were younger, it was usually out of anger, right? Like how, and yet not having explained to them the bound. They were just supposed to know. And
Yeah.
now, with my grandchildren, it's much easier to understand that. And it's, yeah, explaining those boundaries to them. And it's like, no, you can do this or you can do this, but you can't do that. Uh, so if we can start with our kids, then we don't have to wait until we're like me in our 50s, you know, and learning to put all those things in place. I've been doing it for quite a while, but I still have places where I have to learn it, right? I still have places.
It's
Absolutely.
more of a practice than something you do once and it's one and done.
Yeah, that's most of life. Most of life, but yes, keep working at it. Keep working at it. Hmm. There we go.
Okay, Larissa. So before we wrap up today, I know you have a free gift that you'd like to offer our audience. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yes, so I do a lot of work with intuition. And so it's an intuitive journaling practice. It comes with a meditation and then a guided practice to tap into what you already know. And so it's just tapping into the energy of the knowing, into the divine spirit, God, whatever you want to call it. And so it's yeah, a meditation and practice to tap in. So yeah.
Thank you so much. So Larissa, thank you again so much for being here with us, for guiding us through that process. It's been a joy to talk with you and to share you with our audience today. And those of you who are watching, we'd love for you to hop into our Facebook group and show us what your boundary picture looks like if you were painting along with us, or what your journaling was like, or just any ahas and takeaways that you had from this session today.
I would love to see that. Yes. Thank you.
All right. So thank you again, Larissa. And
Yes,
thank you
thank you.
all for watching, and we will be back with another session soon. Bye for now.